Hello guys, good morning everyone. Welcome back to online class at APPA Public School. So welcome back to online class at APPA Public School. Dear students, so in the previous class we discussed the age of industrial chapter, factories come up. Yes, and today we are going to today we shall study about market for goods. But before that, we will glance over on what we discussed in the earlier class. Okay, so factories come up or factories began to be established. So here, cotton and jute mill were the first to be established in India. Yes, we discussed in the previous class that cotton and jute mill were the first to be established in India, and the first cotton mill was established in the year of 1854. Yes, in the year of 1854, the cotton mill was set up, or the cotton mill was established in India in the year of 1854 at Kolkata. Yes, first at Bombay, sorry, at Bombay, and the first jute mill was, yes, the first cotton mill was established in 1854 at Bombay, and the first jute mill was established in India in the year of 1855 at Bengal. Yes, and see, till 1862, yes, till 1862, there were only four mills were set up. Yes, how many mills? There were only four mills were set up with 94,000 spindles and 2,150 looms. This is spindles and looms. Yes. So here, till 1862, only four mills were set up with 94,000 spindles and 2,150 looms. And in North India, the Elgin mill, yes, in North India, the Elgin mill was set up at a Kanpur. At a Kanpur in the year of 1860s, and by the next year, means in the year of 1861, yes, a year later, the jute mill, yes, a cotton mill, or here in the year of 1861, the cotton mill of Ahmedabad was established here. But if we ask a question, when was the first cotton mill set up, then you have to write this 1855 at Bengal, first, which was established. And see here, in the year of 1861, the cotton mill of Ahmedabad was established. Yes, the cotton mill in the year of 1861 at Ahmedabad. And by the year of 1874, yes, 1874, the spinning and weaving mill was began in the Madras, or in Madras they began production. Yes, so these are the things. And from the late 18th century, yes, from the late 18th century, British in India began exporting opium. Yes, exporting what? Exporting opium to the China. Opium to China, and importing a what? And importing a tea from China to England. See, the raw material they were getting from our India and exporting to the where? To the China, but they were getting a tea from the China directly to the England. Yes, and during this time, or in between these trade, the many industrialists become a junior player, or even we can say that many industrialists earned a plenty of money or a lot of wealth because of this exporting of opium to China and directly China to England. Yes, and some of the famous industrialists of 19th century. Yes, some of the famous industrialists of 19th century were Dwarkanath Tagore, Dinsha Petit, yes, Dwarkanath Tagore, Dinsha Petit, Shivnarayan Birla, Jamshedji Nusrwanji Tata, or in short we can call JN Tata, yes, Jamshedji Nusrwanji Tata and Seth Hukumchand. So these were the famous Indian industrialists of 19th century. Yes, who were those? Dwarkanath Tagore, Dinsha Petit, Jamshedji Nusrwanji Tata, then Shivanarayan Birla, grandfather of G.D. Birla, and Seth Hukumchand. And see here, Dwarkanath Tagore set up a six stock joint companies. Six stock joint companies the year between 1830s to 1840. Yes, six stock joint or six joint stock companies who were established by the Dwarkanath Tagore. And Jamshedji Nasuruwanji Tata, he established, or he was set up the first iron and steel work. The first iron and steel work in Jamshedpura on Suvarnarekha River, or on the bank of Suvarnarekha River in the year of 1912, and that is called as a what? TISCO. You might have heard the name is Tata Iron and Steel Company. So which was established in the year of 1912 by whom? Jamshedji Nasuruwanji Tata. And Seth Hukumchand, who established the jute mill. Yes, who established the what? Who established the jute mill in Kolkata in the year of 1917. Yes. So these are the industries which was established by our famous Indian industrialist during 19th century. Yes. And see, as the colonial power began to control over on the Indian trade, the scope of business for the Indian merchants become limited or went down. And even the Europeans or the Britishers, yes, they were not allowed to trade with the European manufactured goods, and they were allowed only, to export. Yes, only to what? Only to export the raw material and food grains like cotton, wheat, opium and indigo, which were required to whom? Which were required by the Britishers. And even the Indian merchants were thrown out from the shipping business. They were thrown out from the shipping business. And till the First World War, when it was started in the year of 1914 to 1918, yes, till the First World War, the European managing agencies controlled the large sector of Indian industries in India. Yes, large sector of Indian industries. What then? Which are those managing agencies, or which were those managing agencies? See, as I told, Bird Higglers and Andrew Euler Company, then Jardine Skinner and Company. So, which were controlled on the large sector of Indian industries. When till the First World War, they controlled, and even the Indian businessmen were not allowed. Yes, not allowed in the Chamber of Commerce, of Europeans. Yes, they were not allowed. And see, not only this, even with the expansion of the factories, the demand of the workers were also increased. Yes, the demand of workers were also increased. For example, see here, in the year of 1901, yes, in the year of 1901, there were total 5,84,000 workers in the Indian industries. How many workers? 5,84,000 workers were in Indian industries. But by the year of 1946, total workers in Indian factories 24,36,000. Yes, 24,36,000 workers were increased from 1901 to 1946. But in 1901, 5,84,000, 1946, 24,36,000 workers, which shows that the demand of workers were also what happened? Increased. Yes, so with the industrial reasons, over 50% of the workers, yes, 50% of the workers in the Bombay cotton industries, they came out from the surrounding district called Ratnagiri, or the famous district called Ratnagiri. And the Kanpur mill workers, yes, they came from villages which is surrounded by Ratnagiri district, yes, which is surrounded by the Ratnagiri district. And getting job was not an easy task, as I told you. Yes, getting job was not an easy task. So that reason, the industrialists began to recruit the jobbers, and those jobbers were trusted and old-aged people. Yes, trusted and old-aged, because these jobbers, they went to villages and they offered a people to come to where? Come to the work, or come to the industries to get a job. And see, here the jobbers were giving the what? Opportunity, and jobbers were ready to take a responsibility of those workers. Yes, so this is the duty of whom? This is the duty of a jobbers. And some of the jobbers, they misutilized the power of their duty, or they misutilized the power which were given by the industrialist owners to the homeowners to the jobbers. And European managing agencies were interested, yes, they were interested in industrial products. So that reason they established tea coffee plantations. Yes, they established the tea and coffee plantations, and even they invested the amount in the indigo, in the mining and jute mill. They began to invest the amount over there. And see, later they began to force the people to buy their products. And as Swadeshi movement began to increase, or as Swadeshi movement increased in India, yes, the nationalist leaders began to urge the people to boycott the foreign goods. Means not to use the word, not to use the foreign goods, but you have to use the goods which were made in India, yes, or which were manufactured in India. And see, in the year of 1906, yes, the export of thread, the export of spinning thread to the China was suddenly declined. Yes, it was suddenly declined because the product of China and Japan flooded into the market of China. So when it was began to spread, or when it was flooded into the Chinese market, the Indian industrialists, they established cloth, or they established the industries and began to manufacture the cotton cloth in India, and which was doubled between 1900 to 1912. Yes, they began to manufacture the goods. And during this time, the First World War which started is, the British were busy in the First World War, or in the preparation of First World War. Yes, suddenly they stopped importing or exporting of goods from Manchester. Suddenly it was declined because they were busy in the First World War. Yes, so these are the things. Yes, the most important in this part. Okay, next that is market for the goods. So this is the most important part. See, advertisement, labeling and calendars. Yes, advertisement, labeling and calendars were used to popularize products by both the British and Indian manufacturers. By the whom? By the both Britishers and Indian manufacturers. And see, even advertisement through the newspapers, yes, through the magazines and through the hoardings, yes, through the hoardings were used to expand their goods, or were used to expand their market in all over the India. Yes, and as we told, silk and, yes, silk and cotton already dominated in the European market. Yes, so here the Manchester goods, yes, the Manchester goods later comes to the where? Comes to the India. So that reason, the advertisement, labeling, and calendars were used to popularize their products by the both industrialists, which were who were the Britishers and Indian industrialists. Yes, and even they made their popularized product through the newspapers, magazines, and hoardings. See, when the Manchester goods began to sell or when the Manchester cloths began to sell in the Indian market, they used, or they put a label on the cloths. They put a label on the cloths that made in Manchester. They put a label on the cloth what? Made in Manchester. And not only that, even sometimes the European, yes, or the English or British, yes, they used the Indian gods and goddesses images. They used the Indian gods and goddesses images like Krishna, Saraswati, yes, many goddesses. So which were used by them because the Indians were believed on the gods, or were believed in the gods and goddesses. So that reason, sometimes they used what? They used the Indian gods and goddesses image on the labeling, where they can attract the Indians towards to their goods. Yes, where they can attract the people. And even by the late 19th century, yes, by the late 19th century, manufacturers were printing calendars to popularize their product in India, or to advertise their product in India. Means anyhow they started these things to attract only towards to the peoples. Yes, that was the main intention. And besides the images of gods and goddesses, yes, they used some of the famous persons, some of the emperors and nawabs were used in advertisements, were in a advertisement and calendars only to attract the people towards to their business or towards to their goods or towards to their trade. Yes, so these were used by the Britishers. So that reason they made or they put a label on the clothes that made in Manchester by using a Indian gods and goddesses images. Not only this, even they denoted the message that quality of the product. And they said is here, see the message of nationalist by seeing all these things, the Indian nationalists said that, or they sent a messages to the people that if you care of your country, see the message of Indian nationalists. Yes, if you care for your country, then buy products. Then buy products that Indians produce. Means the people of India should use or must and should use only the goods which were manufactured in India or which were manufactured by the Indians. So that reason they gave a message to the people that if you care for your country, then buy products of Indian produce. Yes. So conclusion here we can say that the age of industries has meant or major technological changes which were given plenty of opportunities or a plenty of job opportunities to the home to the peoples of India. So this is the main intention of this chapter what they introduced, the age of industrialization. So here in this part the most important, before the industrial revolution we have to read, then emergence of a mills and hand labor and steam engines. Yes, who invented the steam engine? James Watt. Then who patented it? Matthew Boulton. Yes, keep in this mind. So these are the most important part of this chapter. And as we discussed, the history of industrialization started with the establishment of a what? Started with the establishment of a factories. Yes, because even before the factories began to be appear in Europe and England or in the European countries also we can say. And during that time there was a large section of production or there was a large section of industrial production for the international market, not for the local level. Yes. So so that reason the many historians referred this stage as a what? They referred this stage as a proto-industrialization. You have to read this chapter. I may ask this chapter question answers in the test. Yes, weekly test 3 it's over. Weekly test 4 we may. So I may conduct it personally. I may conduct it. So I may choose anyone of here. So that reason you have to read this chapter. Yes, and see as I told, the world trade had expanded. Yes, during the 17th and 18th century, the world trade had expanded very rapidly, and the producers in the towns were failed to produce the requirements or failed to produce the goods which were required to the home to the peoples. They were failed in the towns. Yes, and during this time what happened? The merchants could not expand their production within the towns as the urban crafts and the trade guilds were very powerful. Yes, as the urban crafts and trade guilds were very powerful, and even here the urban crafts and trade guilds they restricted entry of a new people into the trade. Yes, into the where into the trade. So that reason they were not allowed to establish their manufacture or their trade in a place. So that reason they were restricted entry of a new people into the trade. Yes, and so that reason the new merchants they began move towards to the where they began move towards the countryside as they found it difficulty to establish their trade. Yes, over there means in the towns. And see there, yes, they began to give or they supplied a money to the poor peasants and artisans and persuaded the people to manufacture the goods for the international trade or for the international market. Yes, and see in the countryside, yes, the many cottagers and the poor peasants and artisans who were completely dependent on their a teeny plot of land and which were not sufficient, yes, which were not sufficient for their livelihood, then now they had to look after alternative source for their family. So that reason here the poor peasants, artisans and cottagers, they eagerly agreed the proposal given by the new merchants, and they took money from them and they began to manufacture the goods for the international market, and which made possible for remains the peasants and artisans in the countryside and cultivating their teeny plot of a land. Yes, and even the income from the proto-industrialization, which was supplemented from the peasants. Yes, peasants cultivation, and even the peasant can use their family member as the labor resources in their field. Yes, when they began production, first a merchant clothier first purchased the wool from the wool stapler and then supplied it to the the spinners. The thread that was spun, yes, the thread that was spun was taken in a different stages, in a different phases or different stages. First production from weavers to the fullers, and fullers to the final dyers. Final to whom? To the dyers. And the finishing was done at a where? Finishing was done at a London, and gradually London came to be known as what? Gradually London came to be known as a finishing center. Yes. So these are the things what we discussed in this chapter. Yes. Chapter finished. And tomorrow, yes, in the next class, we will go for the next chapter, that is power sharing of civics part. Yes, I hope everyone understood. And if you have any kind of doubts, we'll clarify your doubts in the FCC session, which will be held evening. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.